We thought upgrading to our neighbor's house was a dream come true. Then we discovered the nightmare was living right through the wall. 3 years ago, my partner and I purchased our first home. It was small, but it was ours. The couple next door was friendly, the street was quiet. Life felt stable. When that couple decided to move 18 months later, we didn't hesitate. Their house had everything ours lacked: a driveway, a garage, actual bathtubs. We bought it and listed our original home immediately. A young Polish couple submitted the winning offer. They spoke only English to us, never Dutch, which we found odd but shrugged off. They asked polite questions about the property, we answered. Looking back, that was the last normal conversation we ever had. Within weeks, disturbances started. At odd hours, midnight, 2 in the morning, thunderous banging would erupt through the walls. Music would blare without warning, then stop just as abruptly. Nothing was consistent except the unease settling into our bones. The first visible fracture came when we saw the husband's car. Both sides were mangled, deep gouges running front to back like he'd scraped high-speed guardrails on both flanks simultaneously. His explanation was clumsy: a concrete pole on one side, a wide turning trailer on the other. The math didn't work, but we pretended it did. One evening, 6 o'clock, he called in absolute hysteria. People were outside his house, he claimed, physically rotating his security cameras away. He begged us to look, to call the police. We looked. 2 men were forcing entry. We called 911. The police took 20 minutes. The burglars were long gone. His wife screeched into the street, abandoned her car, and sprinted inside to her French bulldog and the officers. I was walking my dog when I noticed the husband park 3 streets away and casually walk to the scene, like he was hiding his vehicle. The thought flickered and faded. Later, reviewing our doorbell footage, we saw the burglars standing calmly before the break-in, discussing in Polish which house to hit. Nothing was taken. No one was arrested. I told police it felt orchestrated. I never heard back. A week later, I was at a party. My partner texted, "The music next door is deafening again." Minutes later, he called. His voice had collapsed into terror. The neighbor's car had just torn through our front garden and rammed directly into his own front door. 2 men were frantically tossing electronics into the vehicle: televisions, speakers, expensive gear. The same men from the week before. Police arrived in 7 minutes. They caught the men mid-load. When asked for identification, the driver claimed to be our neighbor. He used his actual name. But there was a fatal flaw. In 9 months, our neighbor had never spoken a single Dutch word. This man spoke fluent Dutch with a thick Polish accent. The game collapsed. They slammed the car into gear, and a violent chase tore through our quiet streets until police boxed them in and arrested them. My partner heard movement inside the neighbor's house. Police went back in and dragged out a 3rd suspect. We were inside with an officer documenting our damaged property when the doorbell rang. We turned. It was him, the actual neighbor. His face was unrecognizable, swollen, split, one eye sealed shut, his mouth torn, his arm hanging at a dead angle, covered in defensive wounds. He looked feral, frightened, broken. The officer tried to engage him. He refused to cooperate, refused to file a report. Since the victim wouldn't speak, police had no authority to act. They sent him back next door. Hours later, he rang our bell again. Trembling, he confessed he'd cheated on his wife. He claimed she had hired people to take him out. He begged to sleep on our couch. Terrified of being dragged into whatever underworld this was, we refused. My partner offered to drive him to the hospital instead. We dropped him at 10:30 p.m., lied that we were staying elsewhere, and returned home. We locked every door and sat in the dark. At 1 a.m., our dog growled, that low, specific rumble reserved for someone at the threshold. We checked the doorbell camera. He was there, back from the hospital, standing on our porch, ringing repeatedly. We watched the screen in silence. Then headlights turned onto our street. He panicked. He scrambled off the porch and crouched behind our cars in the driveway, a bloodied, broken man hiding in the shadows of our own property. The car stopped. His wife stepped out. She walked toward her front door, paused, and glanced at our driveway. She saw him. We held our breath. She walked toward him, and under the sickly yellow glow of the street lamp, she began to wail, a raw, primal, gut-wrenching cry that echoed through the empty street. He said nothing. She kept asking questions between sobs. Eventually, they both got into the car and drove away. We didn't see them for 3 days. The wife returned alone, collected their dog, and told us she didn't think she'd ever see her husband again. Drugs, debt, a marriage turned lethal. I've realized something in the years since. Some doors aren't meant to be opened, even when they're the ones you paid for. This next story begins in 2017 when I was 14 and my family moved to a suburb of Montreal. Before I explain what happened, you need to understand the architecture of my room. Our house was a split level, staggered floors connected by half staircases. My bedroom sat exactly between the main floor and the basement, ground level. One wall bordered the garage. The opposite wall held a large window facing the backyard covered in cheap plastic vertical blinds with several panels missing. Even when fully closed, gaps remained. On the garage wall stood my closet, its doors made of sliding mirror panels. This created an accident of geometry. Lying in bed, I could see my window reflected no matter which direction I faced. I was 15 when I first noticed something off. I had insomnia, so late-night YouTube was my routine. One humid night, I left the window open for air. I heard shuffling outside. I paused my video. The shuffling stopped. I resumed. It started again. I told myself it was the audio bleeding from my tablet. I fell asleep. It happened again nights later. This time, I heard breathing. I stared at the window through the blind gaps. Nothing. I turned to face my closet, and in the mirror reflection, I saw movement at the window. A shape. A person. I ran upstairs and woke my parents. My father checked the yard. He found nothing. The gate was squeaky, he said. He would have heard someone. He told me I watched too many horror movies. I wanted to believe him, so I did. For years, it continued. Once or twice a month, always past 11 p.m., always spring through fall. Footsteps, breathing, the occasional shadow in the mirror. I stopped looking. I wore headphones. I convinced myself it was my imagination. Winter brought silence. Spring brought it back. Every single year. December 2021, a violent windstorm rattled the house. I was on Discord with my boyfriend around 11:30 p.m. when I went upstairs for water. My parents were in the living room. This was unusual. They never stayed up late, let alone sat in the dark together. Their faces were rigid, pale. I asked if something was wrong. They dismissed me. I turned toward the stairs and saw flashing red and blue through the front window. A police cruiser was pulling into our driveway. My parents stood immediately, as if they'd been expecting it. They rushed me to my room. 2 minutes later, they called me back up. My father's voice was different. He told me that 20 minutes ago, during the windstorm, he'd stepped into the backyard to secure loose objects. His eyes adjusted to the dark, and he saw light from my window illuminating something, someone. A man, standing motionless outside my window, staring in. My father yelled. The man ran, leaped our back fence like he'd done it 1,000 times, and vanished into the neighbor's yard. My parents called police immediately, then went to warn the elderly woman behind us. She didn't open the door. She screamed at them to leave, or she'd call the cops herself. Police arrived, took a report, recommended cameras. There was little else they could do. The scariest sound isn't the one you hear. It's the one you've been ignoring for years. Why did our back neighbor react with threat instead of concern? Had she seen him before? Did she know him? Was it her husband standing at my window? I don't know. I'll never know. But I know this. I wasn't imagining it. Someone was there, for years, watching me sleep, change, exist. I switched rooms after that. I still can't look at a backyard window without feeling exposed. The final story takes me back to Alberta, where I spent my early teens. We were outgrowing our apartment, and with my sister on the way, my parents found a house a few blocks away at a suspiciously low price. It was run down in a rough neighborhood, but it had space. My dad renovated the basement himself. New carpet, beams, fresh wallpaper with a pattern I'd picked out. For a few months, it felt like home. Then, on my father's birthday, we returned from dinner to find our front door wide open. My mother was hysterical. My dad grabbed a wrench from his truck and went inside alone. We called police. 5 agonizing minutes passed before they arrived and cleared the house. Nothing was stolen, but things had been moved, specifically the books on my bookshelf. I started hearing noises after that, scrapes in the walls, footsteps under the basement floor. I told myself it was old house sounds, pipes settling. One night, around 2 a.m., I was playing my Nintendo DS under the covers. From the wall beside my bed, clear as day, came laughter. Not mechanical, human. I froze for 30 minutes, too terrified to move, too terrified to call out. Eventually, exhaustion won. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Months passed, my baby sister moved into my room. My parents trusted me to watch her at night and kept baby monitors throughout the house. One evening, they went out for a late dinner. I was watching TV when I walked to the kitchen for a snack. The baby monitor crackled. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Then my sister started crying. Then a whispered shh through the speaker. Then a crash. I did something I now recognize as insane. I ran to my parents' room, grabbed my father's rifle, pretended it was loaded, and descended into the basement. My sister was screaming. The monitor lay on the floor, shattered. No one was there. I screamed into the empty room that I was armed. Nothing. I grabbed my sister and fled upstairs, barricading the basement door with a chair. Police arrived before my parents, and officers searched the house. Nothing. Just as they were about to leave, my father asked, almost casually, if they'd checked behind the bookshelf. I was confused. The bookshelf was built into the wall. The officer was confused too. My father led him downstairs, pointed, and pushed. The bookshelf swung open like a door. Behind it was a small, hidden room. Pipes wrapped the walls. On the floor, food wrappers, a missing cup, lotion, a switchblade, and a partially eaten apple, still fresh. Someone had been living in our walls. And when they pushed open the bookshelf, they revealed something worse. A tiny hole drilled at eye level, aimed directly at my bed, at my dresser, at everything I thought was private. They weren't hiding from us. They were hiding with us. Whoever it was escaped through the basement window while police were talking to us outside. They never caught him. My parents still live there. I moved out years ago, but I still wonder if he came back, if he's still watching, if he ever really left. 3 houses, 3 families, 3 walls that held secrets we were never meant to uncover. The truth about the places we call home is that they are never truly ours. We are just visitors, and sometimes we are not alone. If these stories unsettled you the way they unsettled me, please consider supporting this channel. A like helps these narratives reach others who need to hear them. Subscribe to Winds of Thought. We explore the dark corners of ordinary life so you don't have to face them alone. Stay vigilant and lock your doors.